Okay, joining us now from the floor of the Republican convention is Sky News Washington correspondent Annelise Nielsen. Annelise, what a speech, what a long speech. What did you make of it?
It was definitely long. I'm told longest in convention history, longer than the previous speeches given by Donald Trump. And it did have the sense of being two speeches. It felt like the first was kind of the somber retelling of what happened with the assassination attempt. It had clearly affected him, and there were some really emotional moments. And then we sort of veered back into a regular campaign rally speech, which the people here did love, but it did go an awfully long time, and by the end you could see a lot of people kind of shifting feet and checking their phones, but they all wanted to wait for that big balloon drop, that big moment, and the family stayed out on the stage for a very long time afterwards to wave to the crowd. But it did give a clear indication of how much he's been affected by this assassination attempt, and it is going to be a long-running issue for this campaign if he is up against the Bidens, as he still is technically now for the moment.
Well, yeah, so tell me about how that whole opening bit of the speech, which was incredibly well choreographed and, really just, quite impressive the way they set it and did the whole tribute to the firefighter. How did the crowd react to that? Because some of the close-ups, people seem to be getting quite emotional about this.
I did see a lot of people wiping away tears. There were a lot of phones out recording everything. The moment he came out and had Trump spelled in those big letters behind him, it was absolutely went wild in here. And then just when that moment where you could see that the digital screens behind all formed together to shape the White House, people loved that. They want to see Donald Trump back in the White House. And this is such an unusual campaign in that this is his third time around for an election and he's going back for the White House. But there was a very emotional moment where he went and kissed the helmet of the firefighter who died at the campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and that was given by the family and the firefighting group that he worked with in Pennsylvania to be on that stage. There were very somber moments when he talked about the two who were seriously injured, and there's been quite a few mentions throughout this convention, and not just this speech, about the time he spent with these people, the time he spent meeting privately with families who have a relative who's a victim of the fentanyl crisis, families of the veterans who were killed in Afghanistan as part of the withdrawal. And he's obviously done this over a long period of time, putting in the time to spend with these families. And then now these stories are coming to a fore right as his campaign has this extraordinary momentum behind it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that momentum, because on the one level, the speech seemed to be kind of a black and white sort of speech. He paid a lot of tribute to his own administration when he was the 45th president, and then there was a lot of the sort of the darkness of where we are today. And tell us, he seemed to hit a lot of the same notes, but there were some new notes too around immigration, the fentanyl crisis, and this very sort of dark image of World War III that he's talking about preventing.
And look, I mean, I've been to a lot of Trump rallies in my time. Those aren't very different from what we've heard from him for a long time. At some points, he really did seem like he was lacking energy. I think because it went for so long, and if it wasn't for the fact that we were starting off on such a somber tone, and the fact he did survive an assassination attempt 5 days ago, I think our analysis would be very different. But I think also people are just looking at the fact that he was up there, I was watching, he wasn't following the teleprompter word for word, he was ad-libbing quite a bit, and that's one of the reasons it took so much longer. And that is the kind of energy that we're not seeing from Joe Biden at the moment, who he didn't mention at all by name. There was one direct reference, but he didn't name check him. And I think that's also a strategy, because for them, they don't know if Joe Biden is going to be the candidate that they're up against for much longer. And so they wanted something that could hold depending on what plays out. But this is also, I emphasize this a lot for people who don't know what presidential conventions are or haven't been to one. Every single person on the floor there is part of their local GOP. They're the ones doing all the work on the ground. A lot of the women do a lot of work doing the door knocking, handing out placards, manning their local offices. And so this is a call to action for every single person in this room to then go back to their states and do the hard work of campaigns. And this is why this is so important, to rev them up, give them a big party, make everyone excited, make them feel like they've got this connection to their candidate. And I think Donald Trump very much did that. with
Yeah,
his speech today and how this convention's rolled out. But
well, there does seem to be an awful lot of excitement happening behind you right there. One thing, too, that I thought was interesting, that we saw a lot of the Trump family out there, and we saw some newcomers that we hadn't seen before. Kai Trump, let's have a little listen to her.
I was shocked when I heard that he has been shot, and I just wanted to know if he was okay. It was heartbreaking that someone would do that to another person. A lot of people have put my grandpa through hell, and he's still standing.
One of the things that kind of struck me, Annelise, was that despite some of, let's just say, President Trump's personal peccadillos that have been in the media over really decades, he does seem to be a very devoted family man, and he seems to have a lot of love for and from his children and grandchildren. Did that come through on the floor there?
Oh, it did. There were quite a few moments where you're seeing the grandchildren, and I thought it was quite interesting because I was at Donald Trump's campaign announcement when he announced after the midterms that he was back in the game. And you remember the midterms didn't go very well for the Republicans, and there was no family there backing him up. That was, I remember, a very flat affair. It really lacked any enthusiasm. And it was pretty clear that he was doing this because he needed to fight back because he was facing all these legal challenges, and that's exactly what's happened. He's faced them. He's, for the most part, won. There's potential for DC and Georgia to potentially come around, and then the sentencing from New York. But with what's happened in Florida, it's really hard to see how that gets back up. And if, as the momentum continues, if he does end up back in the White House, pretty much all those legal challenges fall by the wayside. So the family's come around. They've obviously supported him through all this. I'm not saying that they haven't been supporting behind the scenes, but now's the moment where the campaign comes together in this show of unity. And Melania Trump, she has introduced Donald Trump in the past at the conventions. This time they gave it to Dana White. I forgive that. She doesn't like public speaking. I get it. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but she was very much there to support Donald Trump. And he does have his whole family around him.
Indeed. Well, Annelise, Nielsen, look, we'll let you go and get back to that convention behind you. Thank you so much for your time here on the U.S. Report.
It's gotten a little loud, yeah. Thanks, James.